Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Prosper.a stock market live streams. What an interesting market we are having today. We are red across the board, but each indice hit its bottom earlier today, so far at least. We'll see how the day closes. The Dow is actually almost going green, so we'll have to keep our eyes on that throughout the stream. 1 hour left in the trading day, but we can't say that Prospero Signals didn't forecast this, right? We had low readings in net option sentiment for the QQQ and the SPY, which if you were in Monday's stream, we were highlighting. So hopefully everybody was ready for the market that we've been seeing. They're still low now in the QQQ and SPY net option sentiment levels. QQQ at 5 and SPY at 0. So we might not be out of the danger zone just yet, with big events still come this week in the Jackson Hole Jerome Powell talk. We'll talk about how much that's going to affect the market. And we have a lot of great topics. So as everybody's getting into this stream, please give it a like if you enjoy these Prospero market live streams. If you're watching on X or YouTube, and definitely follow and subscribe if you're just finding the stream for the first time. Welcome in. So one stock we're going to cover in specific is Palantir, because they have dropped a lot. So let's check in at Palantir. I know they were coming back up throughout the day after being down a ton this morning and over the past several days. Okay, so the market darling Palantir is now down less than 2% today, but at one point it was down over 9%, $143 per share. So it had officially entered bear market territories, which is a 20% pullback. So we'll have to cover Palantir and if it's time to buy the dip in that stock. I have a feeling George will say probably not, as long as QQQ net option sentiment is at 5, but we will see. And then we'll be discussing a possible stake by the government in Intel, what that would mean for Intel and where that would rank them amongst the chip stock leaders like NVIDIA, AMD, Broadcom, and even others, SMCI. Just where does it have them fitting in the semiconductor landscape if that were to actually happen? Next, so we have a couple topics that are fully using the Prospero signals to highlight stocks on the stream, which is cool today. So this is one of the first ones. So yesterday on the short-term bear list, which is one of the initial options, if you just open the Prospero app, you go right to the short-term bull list, but you can toggle on across the top to the short-term bears. Yesterday, both JP Morgan and Bank of America were on there. And I'm wondering, is there something that is being highlighted in the signals within the financial sector that we don't know yet? Are these stocks setting up for big pullbacks? A lot of times when we talked about big banks before on the streams, George has mentioned that they overall trade a little bit lower in the signals. So maybe this isn't as bearish as it seems. The signals are still low today for both companies. So we're just going to highlight that and double click on it, see what's good there. Then we have to go to stocks that are split in our signals. So there's a couple companies. Typically, if you look at stocks, they'll have similar readings for short-term and long-term, but some are really switching up on that. So there's some stocks that are bullish long-term, but have bad short-term signals like SoFi, HIMS, and Palantir. And then there's some that are the opposite, that are like Adobe, Uber, and Eli Lilly. So I just want to get George's thoughts on, like, when he sees a stock like this in the Prospero app, does he still trust the signals as much? So like when you see if a stock had 100 net option sentiment, but it had, not great long-term signals, does he still trust that short-term signal as much? Or maybe if there's a stock with like 90 net options and very good long-term signals as well, like say a 90 upside, does he like that stock more? So we'll just pick his brain about these specific signals and try to gain some value there. Then I want to highlight a few stocks and just ask George which one is most attractive to him at this point. All of these stocks are red year to date by over 10%. And it seemed like on Monday, we were switching from the AI growth tech leaders to possibly others. So the list will be Chipotle, Tesla, Block, UNH, and UPS. So it'll be interesting to hear George which one he picks, if it will be, the UNH or UPS or Chipotle, or if he's going to go with the tech like Tesla or Block. So stick around till then. We got a few more stories too. Sony raising prices for their PlayStation 5, basically $50 price hikes for every model. Tariffs were referenced as why the prices were being raised. So is this just the beginning of the price raising we're going to see? And then with inflation, I feel like becoming a bigger factor for the market recently of it reigniting, is that going to be a problem? And is just a sign of things to come? Next, Foot Locker in our signals is being highlighted as one of the stocks with the biggest downside breakout score. Hey, George, welcome to the stream. But it's interesting because Foot Locker is supposed to be being acquired, so you'd think they'd have a nice, floor level that they wouldn't go below. So maybe our signals are picking up a possible problem with that acquisition, but we'll cover that later on. And last but not least today, we're going to talk about Jackson Hole one more time, the major event of the week when Jerome Powell will be speaking on Friday. After this is behind the market and the market hopefully gets a little bit of certainty from whatever Jerome Powell decides to say, we'll be able to see the market kind of get some footing, maybe see some of this weakness disappear and start our next level and next phase of the rally that we were in before the last couple of days. But welcome in anybody who missed the very beginning. Let me just mention the QQQ and SPY net option sentiment levels one more time here as we begin with the market coverage. So they're currently very low in our signals. QQQ is at 5, SPY is at 0. George, on Monday, it was a pretty bearish overall stream. I don't know. I guess we can't be anything more and just a little bit more pessimistic today with the signals being even lower. Are you ready to buy any of this dip, or just how are you feeling seeing all these stocks drop today?
Definitely not ready to buy the dip. I've been obviously adding to my short positions. I might cycle things out, but at the end of today a little bit. But yeah, I mean, QQQ and option sentiment at 5, and it's pretty stable there. It's not bouncing around. Actually, someone thought it was broken today. But I saw different decimal places involved in that 5. So yeah, I mean, someone made the good point on our Discord that SPY net option sentiment has been low at times and at 0 during this rally. So that's not necessarily newsworthy. But during that time, what kept us in like a lot of the bull positions was the high QQQ net option sentiment. But now they're both low, and that's a scary thought.
So I know you're very signal driven, so I imagine your answer is going to be the signals you see for QQQ and SPY. But what level of bear turn or downward momentum would you be interested in buying? Are you looking for anything specifically other than the signals?
No, I mean, I'd even change my tune a little bit if I saw them go up a little. No, I think it's like, people have been listening to me for a little on this. At times we've been more, risk management oriented. Our shorts are doing better than our longs this year by a good magnitude.
Uh-oh. I lost George. I got you back. I lost you for a second. I don't know if it was just me or the whole stream.
No, I don't know. I'm seeing my internet. My internet's been so good for so long. I've actually been on a nice hot streak with this whole setup.
Well, while you're checking, let me shout out Wolf. He's saying he's sniffing some good intel going to be coming from the stream and saying hi to both of us. Jill said froze for a second, but back now. Good now, said Mario. All right. I think we're back in business.
Okay. Yeah. I think I saw. Now we're good. So yeah, I was saying, for those that watch often, like, I've been a little worried since the market didn't react at all to the PPI reading, the core CPI being higher. That seemed really surprising to me. And that told me even more that we were in a momentum market. And then we kind of did the analysis on the leading indicator this past weekend, and it just seemed to me that it was only a matter of time before it went down. And obviously we were in good position. Matt, who's the other person that writes the letter, he's always telling me about QQQ and SPY and option sentiment. And yeah, we sent out an alert yesterday when they had gotten lower, and the market's been pretty soft since then. So yeah, this stuff is important. I don't know why anyone wouldn't check often, base their portfolio on it. We just see it right time and time again.
Now, this was the buy the dip market, and it's interesting because right before this little bearish turn, we were saying, well, how long is it going to be the buy the dip market? And now my question for you is, so there's some stocks that were down a lot today, but are either green or way up off their lows, like SMR and Oklo, the nuclear stocks are up from their lows of the morning. Would you be selling the rips in the market now, or how would you manage your positions in some of these more stocks that might not be the best in the current environment we're seeing with our signals?
So all my longs right now are kind of buy the dip longs, but it's buying a deeper dip, right? If you look at the ones that I've looked at, like my top four right now, Novo Nordisk, or my last four positions added, Charter, Lululemon, UNH. You look at any of those charts and you'll see a much bigger dip, and a dip that was happening as other stocks were going up. Those are the stocks I'm looking for right now on the long side. I'm very uncertain, but I think that is a good way to balance risk, because I think those stocks, those longs, will do well if the market recovers. And I also think they'll do well relative to other longs if the market dips. So that's a good safe way for me to set up my long short portfolio now. And I think there's value in all those. And I actually think those four stocks will do better if the market goes down than they would if it went up. I think the dollars will go to, the Palantirs, to the, the AppLovins, the stuff that we've been often in this year. I think those have another bigger leg down for sure.
Well, I did want to ask you about Palantir specifically because it's dropping so quickly now. It was officially in a bear market pullback this morning, which is over a 20% drop, but it is up way off its lows. Still red, but down only 1.5% now. And Palantir is amazing to me because it's like for every week, I feel like of 2025, I was asking you, is it time to sell Palantir? It's been up so much. The valuation is so big. And every week you're just like, nope, the signals look great, until a few weeks ago. And the signals started not looking as great. And we see what happened in Palantir recently. What are your thoughts about this company? Now it's kind of, I feel like, in no man's land, off the highs. It still has a crazy valuation. If the momentum isn't there, can that valuation, does it come into play now? So just what are your latest thoughts on them specifically?
That I think there could be a lot more down on Palantir. We got out, we saw that, net option sentiment had gone from the 90s to 60. And that's what that's it right there. We always like to practice what we preach. And as much as we have faith in Palantir as a company, long term, and also as much as we thought it might have been a little overvalued when we were buying it, all those things can be true. That's what's so nice about our signals, right? They help you get out in front of the market. They help you say okay, a lot of these, even though the long-term bets on Palantir are staying live, right? A lot of the short-term ones are changing and people are becoming a lot more bearish in the short term. And, we timed that almost perfectly. And we had that big CoreWeave case study recently. I think Palantir is a really good one where, we knew when to get out, right? And it wasn't even that complicated. I think, I think that's just important.
Well, I don't usually highlight this early, but we've had over 1,000 people already in the stream in just 14 minutes. So thank you, everybody. I saw Wolf commenting that he got some value from the signals in the streams buying Eli Lilly and making a nice return. So good for you, Wolf. Happy it worked out for you. Jay Miller on YouTube is asking, any upside catalysts coming up for BABA other than earnings on the 29th?
Yeah, it was about to be. Oh, I didn't realize it was that soon. I mean, sorry, I thought it was sooner. No, not really. Like, I don't like. I think Alibaba, right? What you're always playing it with is it's a value relative to a lot of other tech companies and consumer cyclical companies that are popular and growing, but you're paying, you're getting a bit of a discount for that China risk. So that's what I don't love about Alibaba. Like, earnings can go very well for it, but you never know when, you never know how real those reports are out of China at any given time. So I feel like Alibaba ultimately moves a lot on news. And that's why I don't love it as much as some other ones, because the headlines can be very random. Obviously, a lot of the stocks we like move on news. But I feel like I have a better grasp on those than Alibaba. The news that comes in for Alibaba, like, feels very random to me. Whereas a lot of the other stocks I follow, it doesn't feel as random and it feels like it's easier to track. I think part of that is because it's an ADR and it's a Chinese company. And through my, network of people that I know on Wall Street, friends that work for tech companies, things like that, I'm pretty plugged into that world and I hear things, but I don't have the same, contact, convictions, anything like that on Alibaba. So that's why it hasn't been one of our better stocks at timing. We had some great runs with it in 2023 when we actually got ahead of news events. But it's kind of hard to know what the catalysts are for Alibaba until they arrive.
I was about to say, like, I feel like I see a lot of disgruntled Alibaba shareholders, and it's looked pretty bullish in our signals for the most part. Like, I wonder why it hasn't performed well. But then I looked at the year-to-date performance. I don't know how closely you track it, George, but it's up 41% year-to-date. So I don't know. It's an interesting story for Alibaba, and it's actually performed well this year.
I'm one of those disappointed people. And I think I'm holding out a little bit. I'd like to get a win on it. I think I probably have. I can look. I think I have, like, this year. I'm just curious. I think I have. Let's see. Yeah, this is not what I normally do, but wow, I have 7 positions, and they're all losses. So yeah. There's something, like, clearly something about like, I'm one of those disgruntled shareholders, and some might say I'm pretty good at this. So if I'm struggling so much with timing Alibaba, it's a tough task for anyone.
All right, I want to move on to our next company now. I want to discuss is Intel. So there was a story that came out earlier this week that sent the shares higher of the U.S. government possibly taking a stake in Intel. And I'm wondering, how bullish would that be for Intel in your estimation? The shares have just not done well for a long time. And would that shake the landscape of the semi companies? Like, where would they fit in amongst NVIDIA, AMD, Avgo, SMCI, all these companies that we follow? Would they jump up any tiers, enter that top tier maybe, or not in your estimation?
I mean, it's really hard. Like, I mean, I actually think if the market is going to have trouble, I think I'm just checking on the signals. I mean, Intel looks pretty good. Like, I saw Broadcom come up very low in the momentum score today. That has 29 net option sentiment now. I don't know what's going on with Broadcom, but it's really fallen off the map. But yeah, I definitely think excuse me, it's a huge thing, right? And I do think it's kind of funny. I do think it's kind of funny that everybody's like, doesn't want, we make fun of this all the time, but nobody wants, like, socialism or handouts. But what the hell is the government owning part of Intel? Like, that sounds pretty fucking communist to me. But I guess it's, I guess a lot of people are only comfortable with the communism that they want. it's definitely a bull signal for them, but they'd have to like I actually look at the chips companies very almost entirely signal driven, right? Like I was on Nvidia, we like Broadcom last year, SMCI. At any given time, if I'm risk on, I'm gonna want whatever the best chip company is. And if that's Intel, it's Intel. For like the last 3 months, it's been AMD, another stock we timed getting out of really, really well. I haven't checked the current things, but yeah, I think that I'm actually curious about where AMD's at. Yeah, AMD took a bit of a 93 net option sentiment. The upside's been just going down. If it's the best in the signals, I'd have it. But yeah, I don't really have any like, especially with government intervention, it's very hard to understand what that's going to be for a business because it's hard to understand what the impact is. Like more funding is nice. And I think SoftBank is kind of like more funding is nice, but we don't necessarily know what they're going to do with it.
I just feel like Intel kind of fits that, like how you were saying you're buying longs in stocks like Novo Nordisk and UNH and all these stocks that have had bad charts. Intel might fit that bill. But I see we got a lot of comments, so let's get to those. Ori and Yitzi are kind of asking similar things of just, did we hit the bottom this morning? Which stocks do you think will go up tomorrow? So a very short-term question there. How do you feel on those?
I don't think we hit the bottom. And I think I think we're going to have, a bit of a bear run here, unless people like what Powell says. That's the only caveat, right? We have to be careful. I'm staying pretty, I'm going to stay pretty well hedged into that event. But yeah, I think that in my estimation, we're much more likely not at the bottom than at the bottom, especially where SPY and QQQ net option sentiment are. You always try to get me on this stuff, Yitzi. I really don't like making short-term predictions. And in terms of what's going to happen tomorrow, like what can recover, CoreWeave is something that I'm looking at, just like constantly with net option sentiment recovering a little better. Is Light still looking good? I don't know. Something's happening. The market's really rallying. Light looks good. I really like Light. I've been holding it, even though it's a risky pick. 91 net option sentiment, 85 social sentiment. As a pretty small cap company, Light would be the one that I would pick. TSSI is one that I'm looking at today. If I was more risk on, I would be inclined to get into that. And I might just add TSSI because that has a really good chart in terms of bottoming out.
Thank you for asking those questions. And we see one on YouTube as well from Yesh Sub asking about the trade alerts, kind of just overall information of how do you get access to them and where will they arrive once you do have access?
So yeah, like the only way you get access to alerts is through the crowd fund right now. And I think within the next week or two, we'll be letting people in the crowd fund in. So yeah, you want to get in by the end of August. If you want to be in that batch. We probably won't take the next batch until September. And then probably sometime in October, we'll roll them out to just people that want to pay. And so the best thing, I mean, if you're a founding member of the investing letter, one of the things I offer is direct contact with me. So you're not going to do any better than that in terms of being able to learn the system. So that's the best one. The trading letter is going to be, and you'll see us update at the end. That's much more like we generate a lot of ideas with the trading letter. It's your kind of job to filter through it. But yes, the alerts are going to be our easiest automated product to use because that's going to be just our best idea every day.
All right, so staying on the bear theme, I wanted to ask you about the finance sector because I was looking at the short-term bear list in the Prospero app yesterday, and I noticed JP Morgan and Bank of America were both on it. They're not there right now, but their signals are still poor. I feel like on this list, you usually see a lot of like small cap. Actually, Bank of America is back there now, but you see a lot of companies that like aren't so, certified powerhouses in their industry. Does that tell you anything about the finance space? Does it seem more risky than other areas of the market? What could the signals be seeing? Let me just check JP Morgan's because they had a very low net option sentiment. They're at 16 now. Both companies have higher downsides than upsides. So just how do you feel about both of those stocks popping up there?
I feel that I'm more concerned. I'm definitely more concerned about banks. I will probably think about going short one of those at the end here in our high conviction portfolio. I do want to cycle out, I think, one of my iHeart positions. There's some ideas that I'm working on. It might actually be a pretty a bit of a complex portfolio turnover. But yeah, I mean, one thing that I noticed, and this is something I pointed out on the streams a few times, but in this latest bear turn, I actually saw financial stocks doing way worse than they normally do. Financial stocks typically do pretty well in bear markets relative to other stocks because they're very cash flow driven and the value comes in. But I definitely think that if other banks are basically not valuing banks well, it probably means that they're worried about their margins. The margins on the banks are getting very tough. There's a lot of threats, especially from I think, especially longer term from the blockchain. And then you basically have perhaps a perception that there's balance sheet exposure risk, that there's not, that some of these banks especially might not have good asset makeups if the economy is to falter. So you kind of, that's not something that you typically see, but I saw JPM, like Ares, Bank of America, a lot of bank stocks really got hit pretty hard, large cap bank stocks. So I'm going to have my eye on them again. And those kind of, if you look at Bank of America and JPM, you're kind of seeing the revert, like the exact inverse of what we're targeting on the other side, which is good. You're basically seeing a few stocks that are really topping out.
So do you feel similarly as like with these legacy banking stocks as like SoFi, Robinhood, all these higher growth financial companies? Are they one and the same to you as risky, or do you think of them differently? Because I feel like, Hood and SoFi still look pretty good in the signals. Hood has looked great. But with the other legacy banks, and you were talking about the crypto aspect of it, are they separating from each other now?
Well, keep in mind, right? One of the major things that I mentioned on why they would get hit is their balance sheets, right? Robinhood doesn't really have a balance sheet. Like Robinhood really just kind of like, profits off the deposits, payment for order flow. They don't have that kind of market risk. Now, granted, as we've seen when they've turned off the buy button, some of their customers, some of their real customers have some sensitivities there. But no, Robinhood, SoFi, SoFi has more of a balance sheet because they have college loans, but I don't think college loans are viewed as risky as, and prone to leverage, things like that. But I actually see a risk to Robinhood, not as big of a risk as some of the ones that we've said, because retail investors don't like bear markets, right? And we saw like compliments to retail investors. I think retail investors willed us out of the last, bull run. It was hit pretty hard, but it was I really feel like it was retail led. So unfortunately, retail does have a hard time accepting, losses. Even some of the questions I'm getting at today about looking what to buy, the bounce back candidate, the bottom. Like that's exactly like what I'm talking about, right? I don't think now is the right time to look for bounce back candidates or to be looking for the bottom. I think now is the time to either, get a little more cash, stick to high conviction longs like the ones that I'm talking about, especially that have room to go up, not ones that are near their all-time high, maybe cycle some of those out. If you want, and or start to look at, inverse ETFs. I think on this one, I used to recommend SEC more, but I don't think it's retail goods. I think tech in the short term is in a bit more trouble. So yeah, some insurance with SQQQ, especially going into Friday. Like if there's bad news on Friday with the nervous market already, like if Powell's just like, even like, I don't know, not like if he doesn't give like, I think some pretty strong reassurances that he's going to cut. I think the market could go down pretty quick.
Yikes. I wanted to ask you about a couple stocks in Prospero, not them specifically, but just the dynamic where I'm noticing there's some companies in our app that they trade their short-term versus their long-term signals look very differently. So some of the ones that have bullish long-term signals, bearish short-term, would be SoFi, Hims, and Palantir, and then flipping it around, the opposite of that, Adobe, Uber, and Lilly. When you see stocks in the app that have different looking long versus short term, does it make you like trust the signals a little bit less for a move? Like for example, so like if a stock had 100 net option sentiment but had terrible long-term signals versus a company that had like 90 net option sentiment but had also good long-term signals, how do you think about those, and like how do you look at the signals for the short versus long when you see that?
I mean, people have probably heard me say this all the time. I like for something to have good short and long-term signals. That's like one of the ways that I risk manage. And, the easiest way to explain why that is because there's always stocks that have both good short and long-term signals. Why would I, rummage around in the garbage bin for things when I have things, right at the top that are good short and long-term? There's exceptions, certain sectors where where they run lower, or market caps where the signals run lower. I'll reach down a little bit more in short and long, but even then I don't want to throw out any of them. Like I probably need upside and net option sentiment to be above 60. Like actually I just dropped this stock VFF because net option sentiment went down from 81 to 57, and it was up a lot, but that's kind of where I draw the line at 60. And it was pretty much like, I still have hopes for this, but, not going to mess around with it. So yeah, I mean, when you look at a stock like Eli Lilly right now, it's got a 54 upside. So I can't, no matter how good it looks in the signals, I can't wrap my head around it. I can't get on board. I could in the trading portfolio, but not in the investing portfolio.
For the newer viewers, can you just talk about like what time frames the short versus long-term signals are looking at?
Yeah, long-term are pretty easy. Those are back tested to, anywhere from 6 months to 2 years. I would say that, once there's been a lot of appreciation, it's good to look at those like short-term signals too, because if those are declining, that's a good indication that, you might want to wait for it, have it dip and then wait and get back in it. But I think that, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What was your question again?
Just asking about the time frame of the signals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So those long-term ones are easy. The short-term ones are tough because, it's actually, especially in that option sentiment moves around so much. We generally say if there's a good short-term setup, we're comfortable holding it for 24 hours at least. But you got to look, right? If you get into something at a 20 net option sentiment and it's up to 50 later in the day, I'm going to get out.
Okay, good for our newer viewers to hear that. And I wanted to bring up this announcement that Sony made today about how they're raising the prices for all of their PlayStation 5 models. Basically, whatever the starting price was, it's being raised by $50 across the board. And I feel like and they gave the tariff, the reason was tariffs. I feel like inflation is becoming the main concern for the market. Do you think that is the case, where like the biggest worry of the market right now is inflation? And then is this a bad sign for what's to come if Sony's raising prices? Are they the first of many to make announcements like this?
Yeah, I mean, what I actually read is like people are like, we've heard people be like, well, the tariffs aren't a big deal, but I did see a stat that said close to 70% are being currently absorbed by companies. And I think it's close to 15% that's being absorbed by customers. And that's going to change. Like longer term, like companies have to figure out pricing strategies and everything, but they're not just going to absorb that cost. They're not going to have it eat into their bottom line. So I do think people are very worried about that. And like the truth is, the prices, for the most part, the prices have not really increased yet. And consumer confidence is very, very low. So it's kind of interesting. It's like, why is it low? I actually think enough people are worried and they're expecting price increases to come.
So what is like the worst case scenario if inflation is rising, but we get Fed rate cuts? Is that going to like fuel the inflation even more? And could we get in a situation where we were a few years ago, where we hit like these inflation levels that are just crazy? Like what's the outcome of all this in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the scariest thing for anyone is stagflation. And stagflation is basically, inflation, an inflationary cycle that also has decreasing economic growth. And yeah, I mean, that's why we got to be very careful with these rate cuts. Because if the rate cuts happen, right, inflation increases because the rate cuts happen, right? Prices are also increasing, inflation increases, right? And around all of this, the markets are going down, right? That's a really scary situation, right? Because typically, to support the markets, the job market obviously is very stimulated by the stock market as well. Like you would cut rates. But if we're in a positive inflationary cycle, then it's hard to have a move. So that's why I don't know why everybody's in such a hurry to have rates cut. The market is doing amazingly. Like when I see that, it's just like, why would we rush to cut rates when the market is doing so great? It really doesn't make sense to me.
Well, you say everybody, but I think there's one person who's really leading the charge to make those rate cuts, which it actually leads us nicely into the Jackson Hole event that is coming up on Friday that has kind of caused, I think, a lot of the turmoil this week in the markets. I wonder, we've discussed before on the streams how the market likes certainty. One way or the other, if Jerome Powell speaks and he says, I'm definitely cutting rates in September or I'm definitely not, will the market react well? Maybe not initially, but like over the coming weeks, just knowing for sure. And do you think Jerome Powell will give the certainty, the clarity that the market is craving of like this September FOMC meeting, like one way or the other, what's going to happen?
I don't think he will. And I think part of what people were reacting to is we just crossed 2,000. Thank you, everyone. Like the stream if you're watching it, on X or YouTube. We'd love to get more people watching it, and they're not going to find out if you don't. I don't expect him to give much clarity. I think like hope of that probably went out the window with the inflation readings last week. Even if he did know, like Powell is very shrewd and he's going to use his time, right? If he sees the numbers get worse over the next, month, when's the next? I think it's like the 16th, the next meeting. he wants to reserve the right to change his mind. And I don't think it's such a slam dunk. I do think he probably will ultimately cut them because, just generally, the market likes to get what it expects, you know? And it's expecting that to happen. So I definitely think, that he's not going to give any kind of assurance. And we'll see how much that affects the probabilities. But I do think, at the end of the day, there's been enough pressure on this. I think, enough people at the Fed want it. I think they are likely to cut, but I don't think Powell is going to give any assurance on that.
Do you know if his speech is predetermined? And I'm asking that because I wonder if the market tanks for the next couple of days leading into it. I feel like Powell's a master at keeping the market stable. So maybe that would be good for the overall tune of the meeting. Maybe he'd be a little bit more dovish. Any idea if it's still up in the air what he could say?
I think it's probably written in advance. But I think, he probably makes some adjustments the day of or if anything's different.
All right, so we have one more topic to discuss on the stream, and we've had a ton of people in here. Thank you all. If you have any questions on stocks, business, AI, macro, whatever, comment them right now, and we'll be happy to answer them before we do our switch over to the model portfolio, which everybody should stick around for because it's an important time in the markets. You're going to want to see it. But I wanted to highlight one more stock that I found very interesting in the Prosper.a app. Foot Locker was a leader on the downside. Yesterday, it was maxing out at 100. Today, it was at 88 when I looked before. It's at 83 now. But I'm wondering, why would this stock have such a high downside when it's supposed to be an acquisition target? So I would think it'd be pretty stable. Maybe there's some questions on whether that acquisition is going to go through. Is that what you'd imagine?
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be the case. Actually, if you look at its chart, it's trading just very evenly. So what can always be the case is it's just it's basically a function of if people are paying. The downside is if people are paying in the long-term options markets for puts below where the stock is trading. So yeah, I think there's probably just very light trading activity in that name, but the people that are trading it might be, buying puts to hedge their deal exposure.
We got a question before we do the switch over. What do you think of XPEV, please? XPEV is the ticker.
Do we have that in Prosper.a?
We do.
Oh, it
looks
like
kind of interesting.
Oh,
maybe not fitting the bill of the environment we're seeing right now, but
down 2% today. Oh, it's an ADR. Only up 14%. Whoa. Wait, what? Yeah, it's up 76% year to date. I would guess this is an electric car. Chinese electric car maker.
Yes.
Just by the name. Oh, look at me. We'll look more into this. I'm kind of intrigued. I want to look at the chart. I want to see how it's doing with the market slumping a little bit, but yeah.
Its time series graph for net options is pretty cool. It was at the high 30s, low 40s for the whole thing until recently. It's up to 72 now, peaking at 75. So
it's a nice move. Yeah, I think I can get behind adding it. I think it's a good higher risk stock to get in right now.
So we'll keep our eyes peeled on that. Good call out. Memento Mori Forever was the name.
Thank you. I'm making a switch.
Everybody, yep. Stick around. George will be right back in the Prosper.a lab. It was in the trading letter yesterday for long. Good call out there. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't leave just yet. You're going to see some live moves in the Prospero model portfolio so you can see what we are adding and dropping. And George will be back to do that very soon. I'm looking at the market. It looks like things are rising into the close, huh? The indices aren't quite in the green yet, except for the Dow Jones, but they are definitely well up off their lows of this morning. I know we got the FOMC minutes today. It looks like that didn't scare the markets. So we will have to wait and see for the rest of the week how we trade heading into Jackson Hole, the event everybody will be watching. The QQQ and the SPY net option sentiments are still low in the Prosper.a app. I see 5 for QQQ and 0 for SPY, so nothing has changed there really. Let me take a look around the markets. Let me just say also, like Wolf was saying in the very beginning of the stream, definitely hit that like button if you've enjoyed it so far. The likes really boost the stream and the algorithm, so we're trying to grow. So if you like it up, YouTube and X will reward us and show it to more people. So we appreciate everybody for watching and liking. All right, let me look around the market. We'll see how the Magnificent 7 stocks are doing today. Apple red, Amazon red, Google red, Meta, Microsoft, Tesla red. Let's check in on NVIDIA. NVIDIA red. Everything is red, although everything is also coming back off of the lows. So it's all trading very similarly right now, it seems like. Let's look at Bitcoin as well. We didn't talk about the crypto much today, but Bitcoin is actually slightly, ever so slightly green today.
Yeah, I've been thinking about Coinbase. It's got 100 net option sentiment again, and I actually do think its chart looks like it has potential.
I saw some people on Twitter mentioning how Bitcoin could be a leading indicator of what's to come in the market, and it's like 10-ish% pullback might have led the market's little volatility.
Interesting.
Although we are seeing some buying into the close here, at least.
Yeah.
Let's see. Palantir has 13 minutes to go green. We'll see.
What's that at right now?
Still.
All right. Where are we? SPY and QQQ net option sentiment.
So we are at 5 for QQQ and 0 for SPY. Very stable today. Stably down.
Damn, I wonder what. I'm kind of shocked. Oops. I got a little ahead of myself on the order. Oh, damn. Hood has finally gone below momentum score. That's a big change.
not surprising to see value doing well today. We will look for more value opportunities on the long side. Energy looks like the bull target and consumer discretionary the bear.
Wow. That's a lot of bear cuts. Let me just do a quick temperature check on So we have 40. Oh yeah, we should have been a lot more bearish than we were. It's kind of a missed opportunity. My mind is moving slowly. What happened to GWW today? Wow, look at all these like tech names down here. I don't want to record a new clip. I like all those. Okay, I feel happy about this. A lot of financial services. Maybe I just want to grab a second one of those. Okay. All right, that is done. Now let's see what's going on here. Softening. Okay, we are going to get out of all of those. Okay. Okay, and now let's see what we're going to add. What is SLDP? Solid power. All right, all right. We already have a lot of. All right. We just shorted Dell. We don't want. All right, so we want. What about COHR? Whoa. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think, unless we have any other questions.
We have one question about the stock MNDY Monday. Any thoughts on them? They've dropped a lot in the past month.
Let me see the ticker.
I don't think I see them on Prospero.
MNDY. Oh. Sounds like something that should be. Oh, I'll add it. Let me add it. It's much easier for me to comment when I have Prospero signals.
It gives the people a reason to come back for our stream on Monday if it's there. By then, we'll get back to it. Thank you for the question. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Another great stream. Now everybody's attention turns to Jackson Hole this Friday. But thank you, George. Thank you, everybody that watched. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.